All right. Thank you guys for listening to Remake Rewind, the podcast where we decide if remakes or reboots should have happened. I'm Mike, and with me, as always, is Dustin. How are you doing today, Dustin?
I'm doing great. How are you, Michael?
I'm great. Thanks for asking, man. Got some Destiny going today. It was fun. How was work today, bud?
It was a long day, but I can't complain.
Oh, good. Double D. How was softball today?
It was kind of heartbreaking. It was our first game of the season and we lost.
Oh,
so
you know
very,
what?
very rare
You guys
for
will
us.
be the comeback kids this season.
Psh, it's not what I like to hear.
Hey, you know what? You can only go up.
David's very competitive when it comes to softball, man.
Psh, I'm competitive on everything.
Well,
True.
I'm sure you guys will win the rest of your games.
I'm sure also.
Good. All right. Well, we're not here to talk about your loser team.
Oh, whoa.
You don't love me, Mike.
Shots fired.
We're here to talk about winning at Death Race. So, just really quick, I had never seen the original one, and I came to a realization watching this that something my dad used to do is, periodically while driving, he would see somebody who, if they were crossing the street at the incorrect time or whatever, he'd just be like, oh, that's 100 points, whatever, right? If it's somebody in a wheelchair, he'd be like, that's 200 points. Like, now, his point totals were not accurate in terms of the movie, but watching this movie, I figured out that this is his inspiration for that. And that's something that I've done periodically, and Katrina's picked up on it now. So, yeah, I've never seen this movie, but I've been playing the game, apparently, in my head.
That's not good.
Okay.
Don't do that anymore.
Dustin, you wanted to watch these movies, so what drew you to these movies?
I remember vaguely. I remember watching the original, and I remember it being kind of off the wall and silly. And I also remember the cars looking like super funky.
Yeah.
Like, and not I don't know. Ordinarily, I'd be kind of off put by like the aesthetic, but I kind of liked it in this one. Like, I thought they were just wacky
weird,
enough to like come back around to being cool. Like, they weren't nearly as cool as like the Mad Max Fury Road cars or anything.
I felt this was more like Speed Racer cars.
It was a lot like Speed Racer, yeah, except with a lot more killing.
Yeah, totally.
And then I didn't really have I don't think I had seen the remake, so that was why I picked it.
Oh, okay. I saw the remake with Katrina, but it was like right when we first started dating, and it was a long time ago, and I don't really remember the movie. But Double D, have you seen either of these movies before?
Yeah, I've seen the newer Death Race. I didn't even know the original one was a thing. Until
really?
we decided to do this. Yeah, I had no idea.
So there was another one that came out direct to DVD. Two of them that have come out in the last 4 years. There was Death Race 2050, which had I think Stone Cold Steve Austin or some other wrestler in it. I don't know
hell
who it
yeah!
was. And there was one that just came out a few months ago that had I don't know what the actor's name is, but he played Deathstroke in the CW Arrow TV show. So we're picking the main two that went to theaters, had wide releases. So I kind of want to just get into it. Dustin, you got some synopses?
All right. So
Synopsis?
Death Race 2000, 1975, directed by Paul Bartel. In a dystopian future, a cross-country automobile race requires contestants to run down innocent pedestrians to gain points that are tallied based on each kill's brutality. Which seems a little inaccurate, because I thought the points were just for different types of people.
Yeah, it was old people and toddlers.
Kids.
Well, I think, yes, technically that's accurate, because the people who got more points would be the elderly and children.
Yeah.
So that would be pretty brutal going after children, and women were worth more points than men as well.
Also, watching this movie, I got a super Hunger Games vibe from the way they talked about it was their national pastime and how near and dear to their hearts this was and how it happens.
Well, the difference is those Hunger Games, there was only a couple of districts that were super into it, where everybody else was this is awful, and we're a poor district, so we always lose, so we're just sending some of our loved ones to die.
Oh yeah, but I meant the way the wealthy people celebrated it and felt like they were entitled to have it, how it was a cornerstone of American culture was doing the death race.
There was some really good one-liners in this movie around it, when they're introducing the characters. So Frankenstein, played by David Carradine, and the only reason he did this movie was he just got off of doing Kung Fu for 3 years on TV. And he was super concerned that he's like, at that time, he's like, if you were a TV star and didn't do a movie as soon as your TV show ended, you're basically never going to act again. So he was just like, I'm going to do the first movie. So this was like the first movie that came to him. And I can't remember his name. Jane Fonda's father, the other Fonda, he turned down the movie, and that's how David Carradine got the role. But he plays Frankenstein, who we find out later is not the first Frankenstein, but he's basically a racer who wears a mask that makes him look all burned up, and that he's...
I mean, it covers most of his face. Like, makes him look like one eye is burned up.
Yeah, and he's got like a fucked up lip,
a bunch of surgical parts. That
he's also like reported to be a cyborg and stuff or whatever.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And there's like, the movie starts off with some like POV shots, like from his point of view, which is pretty cool.
And it's very theatrical. Like they bring him like saying he was in suspended animation, and they like wheel him out on the gurney and stuff. Yeah,
that was a good show.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, well, and what's really funny is they mentioned that he's a 2-time winner, but it seems like he's been doing this race for decades. They say this Frankenstein character has been doing it because it started in 1975, and this movie takes place in 2000. And so I think they said that he's done it like 10 or 12 times, but he's only won twice. Like, I don't really think that's that impressive.
Well, it's not a dynasty.
No, it's
by
not.
any means.
And then they had so this was Sylvester Stallone was like one of the villains in this movie, or like his main like adversary. Not necessarily adversary, but
he was Machine Gun Joe. Yeah.
Yeah, and this was before Rocky.
Yeah.
So
it's weird to see Sylvester in a side role, like a
well, yeah, this was before he was big.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just saying it's weird.
Yeah,
he was okay in this movie too. Like I liked how much he was like arguing with his navigator and being just a butthole,
punching her in the face.
Well, I also liked like one of the recurring.
I didn't really like how he punched her in the face.
Was oh yeah, he totally did.
Being a jerk.
She was fine though.
Do you mean like fine, like she took the hit okay, or like
like she didn't even have a black eye afterward. Like he cracks her in the face, and then like the next day they're on the road and everything's cool. It was weird.
It's one of those nice massages that they got.
He hits like Rocky Balboa.
No, it was before that.
Oh yeah, he didn't train with Mickey yet.
He didn't train yet.
No, he wasn't hitting those sides of beef.
He didn't have to like chase down that chicken and get all fast and stuff.
So, one of the things that like you brought up the cars earlier. So for the most part, these cars were not street legal.
No, hell no.
At any point where they were driving on public streets, they got the actor David Carradine and Stallone drove the cars because they were concerned that if anything did happen, the police would arrest the stunt drivers, but they didn't think they would arrest the actors. So they were doing a lot of their own driving.
That's cool.
On streets.
A lot of it too looked to make it look fast, looked like they just sped up. Like
definitely.
Well, no, what they actually did is they had these things on like winches and they dragged them. Or like for the most part, these things could not drive. So they literally put them on,
I mean, it looks like they sped up the film to give the illusion of speed.
They did that as well, but a lot of time you notice like they just kind of go.
Yeah.
A lot of times they were actually just on like tracks and they just yanked them across things.
Cool.
But it was really
why does Frankenstein have a dinosaur for a car?
He drives the monster. It's just called the monster.
Is it a monster?
It's called the Gator or something like that.
Or something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get that because everybody else's kind of like fit the actual theme, where his.
And I guess the Nazis were okay.
Shit, dude, Nazis are okay now with this Trump bullshit going on.
Yeah, it's true. Are there any like major parts you guys want to talk about? Like any standout moments for you guys?
I want to talk about the bullfighting. What the hell?
Why was that idiot out there? God.
So yeah, what were the other? Like, so there was 5 racers. So this race is called the Transcontinental Road Race, and it has 5 drivers, each with a theme, like a themed vehicle. And there's one driver and one navigator, and the navigator is always the opposite sex. And I don't remember any of the other ones. I know one was Calamity Jane. Then there was the Nazi woman with her Nazi sidecar
Matilda
guy.
the Hun.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense.
Nope.
So she's called the Hun, but she's got a Nazi helmet. Yeah. And then what was the other driver? The other guy?
I don't
remember
recall.
his name.
It doesn't really matter. He got killed in the first 20 minutes of the movie.
Nero the hero.
Yeah, he's going around and he sees a family having a picnic, but it turns out there's actually this resistance trying to overthrow the
race.
They're not even trying to overthrow the government. They just want to get rid of the race.
They want to get rid of the race, and they hate the Mr. President guy.
Mr. President, but their main goal is to get rid of the race. So they sabotage. They make it look like there's a picnic, and the sidecar driver or the navigator for the hero dude is
Go for the baby.
if they scatter, hit the old lady and the baby, and so the baby ended up being a bomb, and they died, which was pretty funny. And the explosion was ridiculous for those cars because several times in these movies you see them flip, and you can see that they're just wooden carts at certain points. And then there's giant explosions.
I mean, I think...
great special effects.
Yeah. Well, what was weird is there were so many people going out just to, fuck with the racers whose job it is to murder them.
Well,
the bullfighting guy, those other, greaser guys, stand in front of the manhole, you know?
Dude, that was ridiculous. There's no way he could have done it.
No.
He did it 5 minutes.
But no, and then the other guys, the greaser guys that stand in front of the manhole, and two of them jump in, and then they close it on the last guy. It's what did he do to deserve that?
Yeah, that's fucked up. And then they go to peek out, and then the Machine Gun Joe came out of nowhere and then just mowed them down.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that's weird is,
the one thing though, the difference between these two movies is that in the original, it's about just killing regular people, and then in the remake, it's about just battling each other, the other inmates, the prisoners. It is like Mario Kart. I mean, very much so.
Prisoners.
And we'll go into it a little bit more, but the thing that's weird about this movie is everybody knows that this thing is coming up. It's the most watched event. They at one point, let's see, I wrote down, so this is what they said: the Transcontinental Road Race, which holds up the American tradition of no holds barred.
That is an American tradition.
We don't. But everybody knows what it is. And throughout the movie,
yeah.
But throughout the movie, they keep talking about there's not as many people out on the roads as normal. Well, of course, people should not be out on the roads. But periodically,
really, no one should be out on the road if they know the race is happening.
And for the most part, nobody is on the roads. But periodically, when they go in the cities, they randomly find people. And there's this one guy working on hanging up a banner that says Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
And then Machine Gun Joe comes in, and he's super pissed that he sees it, so he rams the pole. And one guy falls, and he's like, "Should I kill him?" And he looks at the other, another guy who's still on the pole, and who's this guy's friend. And he gives him the thumbs down, so he gives permission to Machine Gun Joe to kill his friend, and he's laughing and all happy about it.
Runs him over, and then he backs over his head.
Yeah. Or those weird girls that were Frankenstein fans that picked the lucky one to get killed by Frankenstein.
And then And then
when he drove by the hospital and all those nurses put out all the old people in the middle of the road.
Well, he said something interesting about that. I actually wrote down that part because I really liked. Let me see if I can find it.
When she's why did she do it? He's to show me she loves me or whatever.
Yeah. Well, so they dropped the hospital, put the seniors in the roads, and Frankenstein goes, "It's Euthanasia Day. They do it every year." And then so he goes, hops up onto the sidewalk, kills the nurses and doctors, and the newscaster's name is Junior, and he goes, "Frankenstein scores. Frankenstein scores at last, but what kind of score, boys and girls? Just 80 points out of a possible big 700. What do you think?" And then his co-host goes, "Well, those doctors, dear friends of mine, have been pretty smug all these years setting up the old folks.
Yeah.
Frankenstein must have decided it was their turn." And then he goes, "Which only goes to show that even the fearsome Frankenstein has a 100% red-blooded American sense of humor."
Yeah.
I did find that part enjoyable. I was good for him that he went and, did something nice.
It turns out he's not into it, at the end of it.
But he kind of is into it because at one point...
Well, I think you got to be into it until the end. He's got to win so that he can then do the hand grenade on Mr. President.
Right.
That was his plan.
Oh, God, the hand grenade. Oh, I got such a kick out of that.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. Right on the nose. And at one point, grenade. So she goes...
and he delivered it so perfectly.
Yeah. I call it my hand grenade. But at one point, the Navigator, who's the granddaughter of like the president of the Resistance, she's trying to lure him into a trap. And then he's like, no, it's too far out of the way. She's like, is winning all you care about? And he goes, yes, it's the only standard of excellence left.
Yeah, but he's got to
so
win to shake hands with the president so he can blow him up.
Yeah, but the thing is, you can win by getting points. You don't actually have to be the first place person. So,
dude, if you ain't first, you're last. I think we learned that in.
Thank you, Ricky Bobby.
Yeah.
Ricky Bobby. But yeah, this movie was really weird, and there's a ton of nudity in it. Like every time that they had like 3 pit stops, and then they got like massages together,
which I appreciated all of the nudity. So much
team building.
So the thing that I thought was funny about the all the pit stops is it's clear that they did not have the budget to rent like several hotel rooms, so they clearly just rented one large room.
Yeah, and then reused it a bunch of times.
Massages.
Yeah,
and then when they switched to like the hotel room with just Frankenstein and his navigator Annie, it's clearly like the same room, just like a different wall.
Well, there's just a huge amount of empty space in that room. It was a great room.
And then he reveals that he's not really Frankenstein, like he's wearing a mask and everything. And at one point she's like, why do you always wear the mask, and why do you always wear this? Like when you've got such a perfect body, look at those perfect legs. And I'm looking at David Carradine, I'm like, that guy's the skinniest motherfucker in the world at that point.
He's no Sylvester.
No. But God, I really just want to talk about Machine Gun Joe for a little bit. Like, what do you feel about Machine Gun Joe?
Dude, the first thing that stood out for me for Machine Gun Joe is when they were at the starting line and he pulls out the Tommy gun and shoots at the crowd, but he didn't kill anybody. Was it just a fake gun or what?
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, it could have been a prop. It was very theatrical.
Yeah, but he actually seemed angry doing it.
He was very angry the entire time.
I feel like it would have been better for the story for him to actually kill
just
people
mow some idiots down.
Well, he does that a couple different times. So throughout the movie, he's complaining that Frankenstein's so much more famous than him.
Yeah.
And throughout the movie, like anytime they talk about Frankenstein, they're always like, and he's number 2 to Frankenstein or whatever, right? And there's a point when I don't know why he fell for this, but he falls for this trick where Annie the Navigator tells his Navigator that they were going to take this different route, which they knew was closed.
To the dead end.
So he goes to this dead end, and then he sees this guy fishing, and he's like, I know you. You're from the death race. And like he's like, oh, he's kind of happy. And he goes, I love you, Frankenstein. And it's like, first off, how do you get this guy confused with Frankenstein?
He looks nothing like Frankenstein.
A gimp suit.
Looks nothing like Frankenstein.
And so he gets pissed, and he like goes out of his way to follow this guy down and mow him down and like run him over several times in the river.
Yeah, and this guy's just out fishing.
Yeah.
Like
way out in the boonies.
Yeah.
He's clearly not.
And then he jumps his car like down a cliff or whatever to drive through a creek to run this one idiot over.
Which took way too long.
Way too long. He also was already mad that he had to go 45 minutes back to the main road. But he went even further and could have damaged his car. I don't know, probably
always on cameras,
satellites or whatever.
I guess.
Satellite surveillance. It's the year 2000, dude.
Dude, super futuristic. Didn't you see that backdrop in the opening scene?
Yeah. That painted city thing.
Yeah, dude. That's the future.
Mm-hmm.
Drawings.
It's all going to be different in the year 2000, man.
I did like the part when I think they were leaving the first pit stop. It might have been the second pit stop. Frankenstein drops his glove and like everybody goes, and he turns around, and like the deacon guy, so they actually have like a religion based around the death race, and he comes and kills the deacon.
Yeah, and they debate whether it's worth points or not.
Yeah, and so then like afterwards they're like, all race officials be careful, like you guys are fair game now.
They're gonna be dropping like flies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I really didn't get the whole resistance. Like throughout the whole movie, Annie's grandmother was like, no, we need to do passive resistance, no violence. And then, like, her number 2 guys setting up all these traps. And he has a couple, like, legitimately good traps. Like, the first one setting up a family to, like, run away and then having, like, a mine built into the baby. That's a brilliant, plan.
Yeah, the Wile E. Coyote plan was kind of silly.
He did several Wile E. Coyote plans.
Like the fake tunnel, though, that goes off a cliff.
Love that. Oh,
that was so stupid. Like just detour.
But it was hilarious.
Well, it was supposed to be like the cars are going like 200 miles an hour is what they were saying.
Also, she was frantic because she was being chased.
Yeah, and she was being chased. And so, I mean, it definitely requires a certain suspension of disbelief. But in those split seconds, she was like, "Oh, detour, just what I need," and then like into the tunnel, off of the cliff, and dead.
I mean, to be fair,
which you could clearly see there was no one in the vehicle as
we knew that it was a detour. We saw it ahead of time.
Right.
We knew
she would have had a split second to make the decision.
She had no idea.
Just what she needed.
What?
To die.
What? Oh man. So basically, Double D, you were talking about the hand grenade earlier. Why don't you sum up the end of the movie and tell us how this hand grenade works?
Well, the hand grenade is a grenade that is built into a hand. So you can literally see half a grenade in this guy's hand, which is supposedly bionic. And he's supposed to use it when he used that. Yeah, he never takes off his glove because it's a hand grenade. And he shows Annie, right? And he's supposed to use it on the president, but she ends up using it on Machine Gun Joe, which I was very upset about.
Yeah, it was a waste of a hand grenade.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So at the end of the race, they win, and the whole plot's supposed to be he's going to use the grenade on Mr. President. And she tries, at one point, Annie tries to trick him into going to this like place, and they were going to replace him with a different driver, which is pretty risky because he's the best driver.
Super
apparently.
Risky.
And then they were going to shoot him. But at the end of the movie, the resistance like sets up a sniper, and they decide that they want to kill Frankenstein because they think by killing Frankenstein the race will be done. And like throughout the movie, they Annie's grandmother wanted to kidnap Frankenstein because they thought that that would be enough leverage for Mr. President to want to end the race, because then they wouldn't have Frankenstein anymore and blah 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 blah. So at the end, they got a sniper set up, and Annie puts on a Frankenstein suit to go kill the president. And so the guys go to shoot Frankenstein instead of shooting the president.
Right.
Why?
I couldn't tell you.
That
The plan all along was to shoot Frankenstein, right?
Yeah, but why not shoot the president? If you know he's going to be there and you're able to get a rifle close enough to do it.
Again, great point. I couldn't tell you why.
Because all they wanted was
they wanted to end the race. I guess they didn't want to kill the president. I don't know.
I guess.
Yeah, dude.
And
They're
then
fine with the
Frankenstein
president.
goes
They were
and
wrong with the race.
drives the car into the stage, killing the president.
Yep.
And then becomes president.
Yeah.
I love how the stage.
Well, that's how
just
you
like
become
one pillar
president.
of
Is you
wood.
have to murder the president, and then you're the president.
And like,
But
the
it only
president
counts
of
if you kill him
America-
with a car.
Like the president of America lives in like Japan too, or something like that.
Well, dude, America is not a great place to live.
It
So-
is the future.
Frankenstein reveals himself to be the perfect-bodied David Carradine.
And also the president of the United States of America.
Becomes the president of the United States, and
Starts
like
wearing white suits.
Marries,
like a-
what's her name?
he marries Annie, and like makes Annie's grandmother, I think her name was Thomasa Jane, and makes her like the, I don't remember, but like the chairman of
It's
social
like the
media or
secretary.
something.
Like,
Secretary of
defense or
social
something.
media or some shit like that. And they're like, how can you have a resistant terrorist in the in your cabinet? He's like, well, I have one in my home. I just married her. And then he goes, they're like, what about the race? And he's like, he's just like disbanded. He like waves at disbanded, like
Yeah.
there's no legislation or anything like that. He just says
No.
it's done. And then the reporter goes fucking crazy, and then he like runs him over in that weird.
We need the race.
Yeah, he kills a guy as president, right? At the end of that-
And then he makes a point of saying he's going to move back to, I think he said Los Angeles, where the capital has always been, or
It
some
should
shit like
be.
that.
It should be moved back to where it belongs in L.A.
Oh,
You know,
man.
one other thing that's really great about this movie is
What?
that it's 80 minutes long.
Yeah,
Well,
it's super short.
Action
Dude,
packed.
there is nothing. There's no like wasted.
fluff.
There's no tomfoolery.
Yeah, like it's maybe it's not the greatest movie, but it's 80 minutes of this movie, and it feels really tight. Like the whole time I was watching, I was like, oh, cool, yeah, all right, I'm bebopping along through the movie, and then now it's done. Oh, okay. Like I had
This
no
movie-
real complaints about like the length of the movie or any wasted scenes.
This movie to me felt like when like a 10, 11, 12-year-old, before they start really realizing what like sex is, like he was just playing with Hot Wheels cars and made this movie and wrote this movie where it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, there's just these cars and they're racing each other, and then
And
like
sometimes you
periodically
see
they
a
go to
boob.
room. and he totally touched her boob. Like, because there's no sex scenes in this movie.
No, but there's boobs.
There's plenty of nudity, and it's just like at one point, like when they're in like the hotel rooms, and I say that with air quotes, you can't see it.
Yeah.
Like they kind of like snuggle on the bed a little bit, and they like hold each other. Like it seems like it was written by like a 12-year-old who doesn't actually know what sex is, and he's like, and they totally had sex.
They do sex to each other.
Like I if you told me a 12-year-old wrote this movie, I would believe it in a second.
I would applaud that 12-year-old.
I think it would be even more enjoyable at that point.
All right. Do you guys have any closing thoughts on this movie?
I have 2 questions for you, Michael.
Ooh.
Okay.
1, would you watch this on television? Or would you watch the actual death race if it was a thing?
Would I watch the actual death race? I mean, I don't think that I would. Like, this is...
Like, would you be part of the resistance?
Would I be actively part of the resistance? I mean, that resistance was a fairly mellow resistance. Like, the whole time they were arguing about being passive.
Un-American to not support the death race.
So the thing is, I don't think I would necessarily be like down with the death race, but you know, this is a little bit different. But we live in a time where, unfortunately, you know, Americans get taken in the Middle East and beheaded, and like that shit goes on YouTube, and people watch that. Like, I've never watched one of those. I have no desire to watch that.
Follow-up question though: when your own father, as you admitted, said that the old people were worth like 100 points or whatever, did you ever do anything? Did you stand up? Did you rise up?
That's what I'm saying. I wouldn't stand up.
You would just let it happen. You would just let the people get killed. You would just let your dad kill a bunch of people.
My dad never killed anybody.
Your dad killed a lot of people.
He imaginarily killed a bunch of people.
You didn't do anything. Okay, you didn't say anything.
So was that a no then?
I wouldn't watch it. And then you said you had 2 questions though,
well,
right?
I mean, I assumed you were going to say yes, and then I was going to ask you, would you drive in this race?
Ooh.
Oh, hell no. I'm not a good enough driver.
You wouldn't score any points?
No, I wouldn't score any points, but I also just like, I don't like driving for extended periods of time.
So you couldn't drive across country in 4
days,
whatever it is?
I wouldn't want to.
What about you, Dustin? Would you watch this race?
No.
I'm a good old American. I'd watch it.
You'd be all about it?
Oh, yeah.
Would I drive in it?
Yeah.
Like, if I already had, like, I mean, I've crashed a lot of cars, dude. I'm not a very good driver. But if I had any kind of, like, you know, skill or ability, I don't know. I can't say I wouldn't. I mean, if you got talent, you might as well put it to use.
For the drivers, though, like, what is the prize besides meeting the president?
You're like the national hero, dude. You're like the best athlete in the world or whatever.
Did they ever even mention it, though?
I think you're super famous if you're awesome at this.
Right.
Well,
the other thing that's kind of interesting about
you're probably
this movie, we didn't
rich
talk about
too.
this part of the movie at all, is throughout every time the resistance was able to do something that undermined the race, whether it was killing one of the 2 drivers that they killed or, you know, hacking into the commercial stuff to make like commercials for the race where they're like, I'm Thomas Jane and I don't like this.
Thomas Jane?
Thomas Jane was the grandmother's name, I think.
Oh.
So she
Not
goes...
Thomas Jane from Deep Blue Sea.
And Punisher. But they throughout this thing they keep saying that it's the French that were doing this and the resistance isn't real. And then at the end of the movie, before they crash the car and kill Mr. President's like, we're gonna go to war with France and Frankenstein is gonna lead the troops.
Yeah. Why? He's a race car driver.
Just because
he gets hella points
doesn't mean he's qualified to be a general in war.
No.
Well, I mean, didn't you see him against that plane? Obviously, he can dodge a plane.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point.
They can't kill him.
If you can dodge a plane, you can dodge a ball.
Yeah.
That too.
Dodgeball.
Oh, is that from Dodgeball? That's from
Dodgeball.
Plus,
If you dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
Yeah. Well, good.
Anyway. All right. Well, I think we should start segueing into the second movie. And we're going to seamlessly segue into an Audible ad. This movie is not based off a book. No, this movie is based off a book. I don't know if it's in Audible. I think it's just called The Race. But regardless of that, you guys can get a free book from audibletrial.com/MDXpods. You can get a 30-day trial and a free audiobook. And even if you cancel it, you can keep it. How does that sound, Double D?
I love free stuff. You can't go wrong with free stuff.
Have you used the trial yet?
Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't.
Did you?
I don't know.
You son of a bitch.
I haven't.
You son of a bitch. You don't support the podcast.
Psh, no, I don't.
You're out of the gang.
Damn it. America.
Support America.
All right.
And in America, never mind.
All right.
You don't read.
I was about to say that,
Finish
but
your thought.
we listen to books in America.
On Audible. That's where we listen.
Yep. audibletrial.com/MDXpods. Check it out, guys. Thanks. All right. So let's just dive into the second one. This one was made in 2008, and it was actually originally supposed to be a sequel. They were going to call it Death Race 3000. But they could not get, and they were gonna have it set in the year 3000 and have like flying cars and shit like that. And the studio was like,
much more interesting.
It could have been, but the studio was like, "Hey, Resident Evil guy, you're not that good of a director. We're not gonna give you that much money." Because this movie was directed by the same guy who did the 2011 Three Musketeers and a bunch of shitty Resident Evil movies. So I wouldn't give him the money to do that.
Hell no. Hell no.
Don't give him the future.
So they rewrote it to be a reboot starring Jason Statham. And just a little bit of background on this. Jason Statham was like kind of hesitant to do it because he'd done the Transporter. So he's like, all right, I'll do it, but I can't be doing any kung fu or anything like that, or they'll just think it's the Transporter.
Well, I mean,
so they
obviously
made a point to make him not do martial arts in this movie. So when he was fighting, it was just like, I'm going to throw a wrench or...
I'm going to punch this guy in the face.
Punch.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of how this movie got made.
Huh.
Interesting.
Ka-chow.
So, Dustin, why don't you just synopsisize this movie?
You ready? You ready for it? All right. Ex-con Jensen Ames is forced by the warden of a notorious prison to compete in our post-industrial world's most popular sport, a car race in which inmates must brutalize and kill one another on the road to victory.
Yep.
Jensen Ames.
That's all
It's
it
pretty
is.
Like
simplified,
the
but
car.
sure.
That's how they. That's yeah. It is pretty simple. So a couple of things that are different. One, they're all inmates,
Prisoners.
right? They're not celebrity race drivers.
Nope.
The other thing that I found just pretty bizarre about the whole movie is the warden of this prison is able to let another prisoner out of the prison along with one of her guards to murder this man's wife and frame him so that he will have to go to prison to race.
That is correct.
That's insane.
Psh, that's TV for you, man. That's show business.
So, I mean, the warden does have... There are laws in place even today where, like, you can... let a criminal
Send prisoners out of prison to go kill a guy's
Yeah,
wife?
you can give him furlough.
Not to kill a person, but that's why she sent her main dude, like her right-hand man,
yeah,
her Bob the
Pachenko,
Goon.
you my dude.
So, yeah, no, you can send a prisoner out with a guard for certain reasons. Like, you can sign
I'm
permits
just
for
saying, why send a prisoner out there to do it? Why not just have your goons go
that. Why
do
not
it?
just have the guard do it?
Why bother with like the whole hassle of having a prisoner who has a GPS locator? So
Like, there's
if
gotta be a
someone is
record of
able to
that,
build
where
a
he is.
case against you, you have direct evidence that that man was at that place at that time.
I think the reasoning, and this, you know, I'm pulling at threads here, or grasping at, not pulling at threads, grasping at straws. I think what it could be is if they say, oh, you know, we signed him out to go to court or something like that, like maybe they...
To go to that guy's apartment is not a
Would you
courthouse.
shut up and listen? No, maybe like they pick a guard or a person who has like a parole hearing or something, and then they can say if anybody got caught, like he escaped, and then they can throw the book at him and, you know, give him more prison time, like use him as a
You
scapegoat.
are now writing this movie, though.
No,
And that is not your job.
that's true. So one of the things that was interesting about this movie is David Carradine actually had a cameo in this. Did you guys catch it?
I did not.
Mm-mm.
You idiots.
Where was he?
Didn't care.
He was very heavily. He was very heavily featured at the beginning of the movie. He was the original Frankenstein at the beginning of the movie.
Oh,
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Well, that's cool.
Frank.
Yeah. So the beginning of the summary wasn't perfect, but basically in a nutshell, they have this death race, which is basically Mario Kart on steroids. and there's this Frankenstein who has won 4 races, which these aren't really races. Each race consists of 3 races. And he's won
3 races that are 3 laps long, right?
3 races that are 3 laps long. Yeah. And
all on this prison island.
All on this prison island. Which, did they build this prison knowing that they were going to do this already? Or?
They must have. I mean, there's also like shortcuts on this tiny little island.
I do want to talk about the shortcuts later when we talk about the races a little bit. But like, this Frankenstein character has won 4 of these races, so who knows how many he's actually done, but he's done at least 4 on 1, which means he's done at least 12 of these races already just to get to that point. And so the movie starts with him on his last lap of the last race, about to win, and he drops the tombstone, which is like they've got this giant 6-inch plate on the back, and he's about to win. And then Machine Gun Joe, played by Tyrese, which if Tyrese is in a movie other than Fast and the Furious, I don't really want to watch it, and I forgot that he was in this movie.
But the foil to that is Ian McShane.
Ian McShane's amazing. I love him in it. I watch anything with him in it.
Especially John Wick.
Like, he even made that terrible Pirates of the Caribbean movie enjoyable, like the 5th one or 4th one or whatever the fuck one it was. He was really good in it.
I didn't watch those.
I like Ian McShane a lot.
I didn't watch any of those past the first one.
Yeah, I haven't seen the new one. I'm probably not gonna. But anyway, he decides to drop his armor so he can win the race, and then Machine Gun Joe somehow magically has 1 more missile left and blows him up, and he dies. So then what they do, he's like this big celebrity, so what they do is they set up that murder to get Jason Statham in, right?
Statham.
Now, I have a big question, and maybe I missed something, and maybe you guys, even though you missed David Carradine, maybe you guys got this part. So they mention at some point that it's 6 months later when he's actually, when they, give him the proposition to replace Frank. Did they not have any races during that point, or was there a couple
maybe
races?
it's like the off season.
Okay, so there's that big of a gap. Okay.
6 months.
So or they could have run races without
That's
Frankenstein
what I was trying to figure
driving.
out. Did they run races without him, or how did that work? So I'm not sure.
My thing is this, like, let's say you did do a crime and you get into this prison. Like, how are they creating these new race car drivers? Like, did you have, like, before you went to prison, like, a history of race car driving?
Some of them did.
Or some of them did. But could all of them have? Like, that's,
no way.
No,
like,
I don't think
one
all
guy
of them did.
One guy was a NASCAR driver,
Colt.
but the rest of them were just criminals.
Right.
And then they're somehow selected to be drivers. And then they get a whole team of other criminals to help them fabricate a war vehicle.
Right. The thing that I thought was interesting
rather
about this...
rather than give these guys actual, like, classes to teach them how to, like, rehabilitate and get jobs in society, they're just teaching them how to build battle cars?
Yeah, dude.
Right.
It's what the people want to see.
Well, the thing that's crazy about this is the whole premise is if you win 5 races...
you get to go free after killing a bunch of people.
You commit more murders to be free.
Yeah.
So they're not being rehabilitated
But
at
these
all.
ones seem also like winning the race is more important than the killing.
Right.
You have to survive the race to win it. So it's not like you get points for killing everybody.
No,
right?
but it does make the race easier if there are less people.
It makes it easier to win, and it makes it
people.
easier to win the future races, right? Because they're doing 3 races at a time.
Yeah.
And then they get more people each time.
Well, there's fewer people
Well, there's
each
fewer
time
people in
you
each
killed
in
them.
the same race in the different stages, but they're going to end up bringing more people back. So I guess like if you kill more people, then the next race you've got less experienced people to go against, which increases your odds of winning.
That makes more sense.
Okay.
But one could be a NASCAR driver like Colt, so you never know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was a bitch.
He was.
So talking about these, so I actually found the beginning of this movie interesting. Like I liked that first race. I liked them like setting up the world and talking about the different racing and the way it works, and then them introducing the female. So they have the navigators and stuff. So then they introduce the females, which comes out with this music like straight up like, look at these girls, they're super hot. Like that's not the lyrics, but that's basically what it was.
Is that the song? Look at these girls, they're super
That's Mike's
hot?
song. That's what
Something
played in
along
Mike's
those lines.
head.
Or is Look at these girls, parentheses, they're super hot,
Yeah, it's that one.
by Michael Acevedo.
Sing it for us, Mike.
No, I can't do it. There's another point when when he goes to prison and like it shows them
like
locking the cell as they lock the cell door for the first time and goes click clack motherfucker.
Yeah. At that moment when I was watching this movie, I was worried that the movie was not going to have a very good soundtrack. Fortunately, that song came on very loud.
How could it not if it has Tyrese in it?
Right?
Come on.
So what's weird is like they set this up like they show his first day in prison and like immediately he like kicks his roommate's ass and then like the guards come in, he's like he slipped, and then he goes to like the stereotypical scene where they're in the cafeteria and the guy who actually killed his wife comes in and starts giving him shit. So he like beats the shit out of him, and then for whatever reason this guy goes
like a bunch of Trump supporters come and try to fuck us up.
But he says something along the lines, he's like, you killed your wife, you know, that's like the lowest form of punishment or the lowest thing you can be or whatever, which in real life, like if you're a child murderer or a rapist, like a pedophile, like you don't do well in prison. But he comes and says,
the other part of it is like, dude, you killed my wife.
Right? So anyway, he doesn't know that for sure at this time.
No,
but
I
he comes
know,
up, he's
but
like,
the dude making the accusation is the dude that did it.
Yeah, exactly. But he's like, you killed women. That's the lowest of the lows. And then he just like does this like slippery slope. He's like, you probably rape children too. You hear that, everybody? This guy rapes children, trying to get everybody to whoop his ass. And it's like, that's a slippery slope. How do you get there? Like, unfortunately, lots of people kill women. Lots of men kill their wives, unfortunately. But like, most people don't rape children. Like, even criminals, most don't do that. So he like does this like slippery slope thing.
It's escalated
then
quickly.
They fight. And then he gets pulled into the office by the warden, Hennessy, who like he swears and she's like, I don't like swearing.
From Pleasantville.
Yeah, she's also from the Bourne franchise.
She's also the mom in Face Off.
She is.
What?
Yep.
So then she like sets up the scenario that only a couple of guards and then his pit crew are gonna know that he's not the real Frankenstein, and basically in the race to make it where you can see Jason Statham, they're like, oh, by the way, you're the only one that has mirrored windows, so nobody's gonna see you. And so he like can drive around with his mask off the entire movie. Any major points you got? I've got a few things I want to touch on, but anything you guys want to talk about in this movie?
Well, I thought it was strange how they set up the track with like it was a video game. Like you literally had to drive over the power-ups to like activate your guns or your defensive stuff. But then also like the warden could just make that not work.
Yeah, which she does several times throughout the movie.
Like a lot. Like the thing I want to bring up about this movie is, and I think we were talking about before, is about halfway through this movie, it feels like the movie just gets stuck in a loop.
I agree.
Where it's like
the first
every
race was
scene,
fun.
you feel like you've already seen it. Like the races, the part that it builds towards, which is supposed to be the exciting race part, is actually very dull and very repetitive.
Like the first race was kind of cool. Like, okay, I see what they're doing. And then, you know, that's lap 2 is when they turn on the weapons. Like, okay, this is cool. And then, you know, they had a few pretty cool kills. And then it just went on and it went on and it went on. And then finally that race ended. And then the second race was basically the same thing.
Just like what you saw. Just different people die.
Yeah, well, then they had like the dreadnought come. And then inexplicably they can turn on their radios and talk to the other drivers, which doesn't make any sense.
Which has never been a thing.
They could talk. They just told him. They said they like Ian McShane told Jason Statham, "Don't talk to the other drivers because Frankenstein never does."
Got it. Well,
so
no, he
maybe
says that
the other
before
drivers
the
are
race.
talking to
He
each
says
other.
that
Yeah,
before
yeah,
the race. Just don't do
but
it.
maybe
I mean,
like the other drivers are talking to each other, and Frankenstein just doesn't do that.
it,
I
okay.
don't know. Like maybe they're taunting each other or whatever. But he says like, you know, let the mask do the talking or whatever.
I
or
thought that was just like
shit
between races and stuff like that. Like, don't.
No,
talk.
I figured they had like communications.
That's
the
weird.
other thing though that is weird is they have cameras all over the place, right?
Right.
And they say that you can watch this race from the view of your favorite driver, but it doesn't seem like the warden can watch inside the cars.
Right? Well, yeah, because well, then also, if it's a live stream, like there must be some sort of delay, but that's a lot of feeds to go
and
through.
If you got cameras everywhere, would it not matter that the mirrored glass is in place because there's a fucking camera inside the car?
I didn't even think of that. Well, and the other thing is he gets out of the car, but he does put on the mask, and he kills the guy
snaps
by
his neck.
hand.
And then just
Yeah, this
stares at the
movie's
camera
falling
that
apart.
he knew was there.
Oh, dude, like it hangs together with like Scotch tape. Like,
So the thing is, at one
like
point,
you're saying, the other movie felt like it was written by a 12-year-old.
so one of the other, yeah, totally. The other thing that is going on is his navigator, who's female. Like, so they have female navigators
Except
to
Tyrese.
get men interested in watching
Machine
this.
Gun
Like
Joe.
the murders are not enough, but Tyrese's Machine Gun Joe, they keep saying that he might be gay because all of his navigators are men. But then one person's like, no, it's because all of his get killed. He keeps pushing them out of the car, and people don't want to see that with women. Even though women still die. Plenty of women still die in this movie.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that was a little weird. But you find out that his navigator, Case, has been told that she'll get released if she keeps Frank from winning.
Right.
So she's like sabotaging him this entire time. And then in addition to, like, I don't know why they need her to sabotage when they can just turn off the weapons and stuff at any point. Like, I don't know why they needed her.
Why can they not then just turn off the car? Like,
They're
it
supposed to be
doesn't
able
make
to.
sense.
Well,
Yeah.
and then you find out at the end that they're like, basically, she talks to Jason Statham's character again and was like, look, you're a celebrity. I really don't want you to win and leave. Is there any way I can convince you to just keep racing?
Stay as Frank.
And, I'll give you a life of luxury in between races, and we'll, like, give your daughter a life of luxury, blah, 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 blah. And so at that point, he's like, oh, I'm never getting out. What point did he really think he had a chance of getting out? Because he would only have to win one race.
Yeah, that would
Like, how
make any
sick
sense.
do you have to believe that you're actually going to get out of this situation?
No, yeah, it's stupid.
And
even if you win, you're not going to get to leave.
Right, exactly. Like, why did he ever think that was going to be the case? So anyway, he decides he wants to escape, and he tells Ian McShane, and Ian McShane apparently can just turn off all the stuff anytime he wants. So he figures out how to override all the stuff. He figures out how to, like, it was really stupid. They put a giant, obvious bomb onto the car for the last race, and they took that bomb right off.
And he
But
gifts it back to Hennessy.
yeah,
how
it gives
does
it
that
back
happen?
to the warden. I don't know how they got that back. Like, when did they do it? Because it showed them while the race was still going, and as they busted out of the prison, they still had it. So how did that bomb actually get to the warden?
And why was it not screened?
Right?
Like, what
It
the
doesn't
hell?
make any sense.
None.
Let me just mail this bomb
whatsoever.
into his prison.
Also, did they get on a train at the end of
why-
the movie?
I don't know.
They did.
Like a
They did get
train
on a
goes out
train.
to the prison island?
Past
I guess.
the bridge, of course.
So one of the I only wrote down like one line from this movie. So the warden throughout the entire movie is like, anytime someone swears, she's got like this aversion to swearing.
Yeah.
And then at the end, this line doesn't make any sense, but she's like, okay, cocksucker, fuck with me and we'll see who shits on the sidewalk. And I'm like, what?
What?
What does that even mean?
We'll see who shits on the
But
sidewalk.
she doesn't swear.
Like-
She doesn't know how to use it.
That's like Gary Busey
Maybe.
level in Point Break.
Okay.
Like if you told me if Papa said that in Point Break, I'd be like, oh, okay. But it just didn't make sense.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Is there? And like him and Tyrese inexplicably become best friends.
Why does Tyrese
Yeah.
never light his cigarette until the end?
I don't know.
And he's
But yeah,
always
like-
like pretending to smoke it.
Yeah, like Tyrese is like super killy. Like he kills his own people. He kills his own crew. He's killing. Like he likes killing people.
And why is he the
and then
only
at
one
the end,
with the truck?
like they work together. What was that?
Why is he the only one with a truck?
Yeah,
Yeah.
if truck is an option for this death race, why do they not all select truck?
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know.
with
It doesn't make any
RPGs.
sense.
Like what? The
Like,
hell?
it's not a race, really. Like, I mean, it's about surviving it, you know?
And he gets
Like,
missiles. Why does he get missiles and everybody else
Why
picks
would
machine
you
guns?
choose
Speaking
not
of
missiles?
the RPG, like in that opening scene where they kill Frank, couldn't he have just like driven to the side and dodged the RPG?
No.
Probably.
Oh, thank you, Michael. That explains a lot.
No, the plot did not allow it.
Got it. Okay.
He didn't have plot armor.
Got it.
Yeah,
So-
dude.
As I was like, they work together to take down that big rig. Which, by the way, like you said, it all started to blend together. I totally didn't realize there was a big rig in the movie like they see like they pan out at one point. They're like, what are they working on in there in like the pit area? And then like the big rig comes. I didn't even realize the big rig scene was happening until it was over because it was just like my mind went numb watching this movie. And then it blew up. I'm like, oh shit, there was a big rig. When the fuck did that happen?
So the part that happened with the spikes that came out of the ground, right?
I don't even remember the spikes coming out of the ground.
The spike that came out of the ground. But the first time they did that, those spikes came out super slow. And this time they just like popped up.
The thing about it, I think, is just aesthetically, and this would be the big contrast between the two movies, is I feel like in this movie, everything looks the same. Like when he's at work, like at the factory or whatever, it looks just like the inside of the prison.
Right, it does.
And then like all of the cars are all like, like this distressed kind of metal color, like, and then the sky is gray.
Yeah, wouldn't these be like super sponsored?
Just the color palette is so samey.
Yeah, why are they not sponsored like NASCAR?
There's like, when they say there's like 70 million viewers watching this
like
shit,
$100 per race,
and they're trying to make money off of it. Like there'd be hella sponsors. There'd be tons of logos and colors. And
we could run this death race way better.
Oh, we'd make so much money.
Oh man! Wait, so how did they get the cars if they weren't sponsored?
Exactly.
Oh, I mean, well, so
I don't know.
I've got an answer for this question. So these were privatized prisons for profit, and like this was supposed to be like the most profitable business at that point. So there was a ton of money in the prison business.
But I mean, so there's a lot more money in sponsorships.
They can afford 5 cars,
I suppose,
or however many cars they were,
and all the weapons.
But anyway, a big problem that I had with this movie is they worked together once in the second stage, and then in the somehow like they don't actually show it, but somehow they talk to each other and like, look, we're gonna escape together. And Ian McShane and his pit crew and Machine Gun Joe's pit crew were all like, okay, we're gonna help just these 2 guys escape.
Yeah.
And all is well and good. And like Case, the female, his navigator was all cool with like dressing up like him to help him get out, right?
And they still let her go.
Even though she was going to get out, apparently, if she helped. So, this guy who loves killing people gets out with Jason Statham, and they're, like, living together, broing out Mexico. At, like, a chop shop in another country. Yeah, in Mexico or wherever they are. And it's like, I would not let this murderer be around my daughter.
Dude, they're best friends now.
Yeah, it's like that scene in Step Brothers. Did we just become best friends?
It doesn't matter that you murdered someone or multiple people.
So I'm just going to throw this out there, and I think I know Dustin's answer. I already know the answer to this question, but at one point, I don't remember exactly why I felt this way, but the way Pacheco, who's the guy who killed his wife and was like the driver, he did this like thing with like the finger guns, and that's how he figured it out. But he did these looks, and I was like, who would have been would have been awesome to be Pacheco instead of whoever that guy was?
Shooter McGavin.
Who?
Mads motherfucking Mikkelsen.
Oh, dude.
He would have been
great in this movie. Too scary. He would have been way too scary.
I would have loved it if he was in this movie.
But I don't know.
I mean, I love him in any
Would
movie.
Mads Mikkelsen win a fist fight with Jason Statham?
He's pretty big, dude.
He's a tall dude.
This guy didn't win a fist fight with Jason Statham.
I know, but could he even contend it?
Yes, because this Jason Statham doesn't do kung fu or anything.
But he's fucking ripped.
Fuck you, Double D. Don't be underestimating the Mads.
I'm
okay?
just a Jason Statham fan. He's a short dude. I'm a short dude. I like short dudes.
I like Statham. He's cool.
I like Statham too. Actually, I'm kind of bummed that I did not like this movie as much as I thought I would, because I actually do like Jason Statham in pretty much everything.
Even Death Race?
Like, I feel like Crank and Crank 2 are both better movies than this.
They're different. They're interesting movies. I like Statham. Like I think he did fine in this movie. Like Jason Statham is pretty much the same in every
this movie sucks.
What was that?
It's not his fault that this movie sucks.
He did his best.
Yeah. He brought his A game.
Let's see.
It just wasn't a very good movie to be
in. It wasn't.
No.
Like, as far as going, like, should this movie have been remade? I'm gonna say no.
No, it didn't. No,
not as this.
And the thing is,
and honestly, I think, dude, in terms of our podcast, does this make 2 strikes for Paul W.S. Anderson, the director?
It did. Absolutely, it did.
Yeah.
This guy.
I don't know if he's got any other. And the thing is, he actually has a couple movies that are actually really good, but most of them are not so good. And you know what? We're probably going to have to cover him a third time because they're currently rebooting the Resident Evil franchise. So he's always been the rebooter, but eventually we're going to cover him as the rebootee. And we didn't, when we picked this movie, we didn't realize that he was the director of this. So that's 2 movies back to back that we did with him as the director of the remake.
Oh, strike 2.
So yeah, that was weird. But
has he remade anything else?
let's find out really quick. He's done a bunch of movies.
Do the research, Michael.
He's done a bunch of movies, and you hate him?
I hate him as a person. Let's see. Paul W.S. Anderson. Let's see. So he did Alien vs. Predator, which is not very good. He did like 4 of the 7 Resident Evil movies. He did Pompeii, which was awful. He did Death Race 2 as the producer. Let me just look at him as director. He did
just name a good
Soldier
one.
with Kurt Russell, which is pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, Event Horizon. He did
Horizon's
Mortal Kombat.
pretty good.
And yeah, I mean, those are his highlights. Fuck him. I don't care.
Fuck him.
Dang.
Such hatred.
I'm surprised Mila Jovovich wasn't in this movie.
Maybe she was and you just didn't see her.
No, I'm pretty sure I'd see her.
She was the original Frankenstein.
Anyway, is there anything else you guys want to touch upon on this movie?
When they dropped the tombstone, why was the gas can just exposed?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Like, you could have put one additional layer between the tombstone
easily.
and the gas tank.
And the thing is, they were saying that was 6 inches of solid steel.
Yep.
Like, I know they were going up against like 50 cal things, but I feel like it would take a lot longer to go through that. And if that's
the other thing is that would significantly slow down the vehicle.
It would be back heavy. Like, how does it not lean back?
Super heavy. So it was 6 inches there, and then they said it was 3/4 inch steel everywhere else on the car.
Yep.
Yeah.
Also,
like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that much about tanks and stuff, but like, that seems really, really heavy
tanky
for a race car.
On a Mustang chassis.
Did anyone die from bullets?
Yeah, some of them did.
Who?
Don't worry, but so name this guy.
Oh, because I don't remember any bullets deaths. There were definitely a lot of bullets fired, but I don't remember any bullet deaths.
I don't remember anybody getting shot with a bullet.
That somebody was gonna get killed with bullets, they would do something like the person driving the car with the bullets would either like crash into something or they would shoot. So like in the first race, they could not get the napalm to work.
Yeah.
So they took the napalm tank out, put it in the ejector seat, covered a different car in napalm, and then threw the cigarette lighter at it.
The most important part of the vehicle.
Stupid.
Yeah, according to that one ding dong.
Stupid.
Stupid.
This is a stupid movie, guys.
So, what I'm going to say, just closing remarks on this is, the first movie, like you said, Dustin, 80 minutes. Just watch it with some friends. Like, if you just have some people over, if you're bored, throw that movie on. Like, it's a fun, stupid movie to watch for 80 minutes.
Open some cold ones with the boys.
This new one, I don't think it doesn't have its merits. Like, I think you could make a good movie, even out of the prison scenario. Just make it less generic. Maybe have a couple of different tracks that have different themes. It could have made it more interesting. But
what if they had to like transport the prisoners like all over the country to different prison tracks? Right,
that would be cool.
It would have been better. But again, it's not my job to make this movie better than it was.
But I'm saying, like, this movie, I'd say watch that opening scene with like the original Frankenstein, and you get the gist of the movie. That's it.
Yeah, I'd say just don't watch it.
All right.
Don't.
You guys done talking about this movie? I'm pretty much spent.
America. Sucks.
Fuck yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's enough of this crap. Don't watch it. Didn't need to get remade. It's an hour and 45 minutes long.
Yeah, it was a struggle.
And
you'll never get that time back.
To this one. Oh, no, I'm sorry. They've made one sequel. So they made one sequel called Death Race 2, and then there's a new one that came out called Death Race 50, which I guess is another reboot, but it was straight to DVD, so fuck it.
So you're saying...
You know what else is stupid? On IMDb, Death Race, the 2008 one, has a 6.4 out of 10 star review based on 175,845 reviews, and Death Race 2000 has a 6.2 based on 21,147 reviews.
So not enough people have seen this one.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, Remake Rewind fans, go write reviews on IMDb and bring up
Equalize
the
this
score for
shit.
Death Race 2000.
Bring justice to IMDb.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. You guys can check out everything that's MDXpods related at MDXpods.com. You can also check us out on Instagram and Twitter at MDXpods. We have revamped Patreon, and as of the Three Musketeers episode, we will be having these episodes up at least a day early on Patreon. So if you want to help us out, you can get episodes early. So do that. And also check out our other podcast, Ruin My Childhood, with me and Kat. And that's everything for me. You guys got anything else?
I'm done.
That's all I got.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Later, dudes.
Bye.